all for joining us today. This webinar came out from as a follow-up to a webinar that we did actually on Halloween last fall on challenges and opportunities related to interdisciplinary programs and interdisciplinary teaching. And as part of the pre-workshop survey, we asked people about the challenges and issues that they were facing, and preparing students for careers came up extremely high in the list of issues that you and your colleagues are facing. And so that's why we recruited some of the leading people when it comes to preparing your students for environmental careers for this webinar, and I will introduce them in just a second. I'll also say to keep watching this space, as we will have a series of other webinars related to interdisciplinary teaching and learning and interdisciplinary programs, especially over the March and April. So our presenters today are Kevin Doyle, who is principal of Green Economy. He is, as far as I can tell, the leader when it comes to knowledge about eco-careers and preparing students for environmental and sustainability careers. He had a long and productive career at the former Environmental Careers Organization, and I've worked with Kevin quite a bit over the years. His close professional colleague and partner, Lisa Yee Litzenberg, is the career coach and president of the Green Career Advisor. She was previously with National Wildlife Federation and a career leader for graduate students at the University of Michigan School of Natural Resources. And so these are really the two top people in terms of preparing students for green careers. And then we're also joined by Dr. Alan Christensen, who is Associate Professor of Freshwater Ecology and Conservation and the Director of the undergraduate program at the School for the Environment at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And as you'll see from Alan's presentation, they do a fabulous job of preparing their students for getting and succeeding in careers. So without further ado, I will thank the three of you and turn it over to Kevin for his presentation.
Thank you, David, and hello to everyone. I want to start by saying a big thank you to NAGT and to AESS for seeing the need for a conversation about infusing career preparation, maybe a little bit better than we do so far, into interdisciplinary environmental programs. I'm myself a graduate of a undergraduate interdisciplinary environmental program, and it was 6 of the best years of my life. I was fortunate to have both parents and professors and mentors who allowed me to consider the idea of stopping out of college from time to time to go and do some work. And it was a really great experience, and I think I learned a lot. But since then, I've spent most of my time in the intersection between employers and employer need and practitioner needs and higher education, trying to ferry information back and forth that would make employers better understanding people of the idea that work is learning, and help higher education understand that learning can take the form of work. So I bring that kind of perspective to this whole presentation. The people that you see on the screen right now are some people that I work with through my engagement with the NOAA Coral Reef Management Program. So these are recently graduated graduate students who work on coral reef programs, and their supervisors gather together to talk about how to improve coral reef management, and how to incorporate learning into work and work into learning. So next slide. So how do you do it? So I've tried to take all of the tips and tactics that I wrote into my essay about 10 ways to improve eco-career preparation for programs like yours. And I've taken those tips and tactics and incorporated them into just a few strategies. And I think the first strategy is the most important of all of the strategies. So if you had to leave right now and this is the only thing you remembered, what I'd like to ask you to consider is that starting early to get your charges, your undergraduate students, to consider themselves as engaging in two things simultaneously. One of them is to be active learners, academic thinkers, people who are learning about new possibilities and exploring the world and themselves, becoming better citizens, and all of the other things related to a great liberal arts education. They're doing that. Simultaneously, they're learning about who they are as a practitioner, what they want to do with their lives and careers, what employers want, and trying to figure out ways to start as early as possible to weave those two things together into a single strategy. And there are all sorts of ways to do that. Some of the ideas that you see on the screen, I'm not going to talk as much about because Dr. Alan Christian at UMass Boston is exploring some of these ideas in real time, in real practice in his program. And so I'm going to talk about one of them here now on this slide, which is the second one, connecting career advising and academic advising. It's oftentimes the case that when people that are young students in undergraduate programs go to their so-called advisor, they find that they get a lot of good advice about what courses to take to complete the degree and what courses to take if they're interested in certain subject matter like climate change or whatever it might be. But they get less good career advice. And then as they get closer to the end of their program, they start shifting their concerns to, hey, I want career advice. And it would have been helpful for that to happen early on at the beginning. So if you can start by connecting career and academic advice together into the program as early as possible, that's a great thing to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about, throughout this whole webinar, about some ideas about how to do that better. The next slide. So the next strategy is to involve employers in the life of your programs. And my experience has been that, at least specifically for undergraduate interdisciplinary programs, employer involvement usually happens only in the form of something like career fairs, inviting employers to career fairs and coming in from time to time, you know, kind of in a recruiting capacity. Or maybe sometimes there'll be some kind of a advisory group that meets maybe once or twice, gives some generic advice. And usually these are advisors, in quotes, that are taken from the alumni. They're well-meaning people. And I would encourage you to go much deeper than that. Employers have a lot of ideas about how to improve the education of environmental professionals that go way beyond the individual needs of their current job postings. They are deep thinkers in many cases about what it means to be a professional, where the trends are going in their field, how interdisciplinary people are both better and more difficult to hire, and they can bring those kind of things. One of the suggestions that I would ask you to do is think about organizing, developing a curriculum sessions, DACUM sessions, and making these intensive sessions where you bring in employers from a wide variety of different fields, not only your own alumni, not only people who care already about the program, but people who you scope out as having deep knowledge and deep experience at the leading edge of their professions and at the leading edge of work involvement in terms of whether they're private consultants or local, state, and federal government agencies. people who are really at the leading edge of the work itself, and invite them in for facilitated sessions to have them look deeply at what you're currently offering and make suggestions for change. I think you'd also want to bring them in as guest lecturers. And when you bring them in as guest lecturers, don't invite them to just talk about the usual things that practitioners are often asked to talk about. For example, please describe a day in the life, tell me the story of how you got here, and what advice do you have for our students in getting jobs? Instead, invite them to talk about the work itself. Go deeply into what they're working on right now. What are the problems? What are the barriers? What are the challenges? Where did the funding come from? Why are we working on this instead of something else? What kind of skills are needed to work on it? What kind of things are we running into that we could actually use creative thoughts and ideas? Because the sooner that your charges can start thinking of themselves as professionals in training, the sooner they will start asking themselves, what do I need to do with my undergraduate education so that I can work in a challenging way, in a successful way, on projects like the one that guest lecturer just talked about. Next slide. So of all the things that I talk to undergraduate programs about, this is one that, a piece of advice that is often given and rarely followed to the degree that I think it might be for you to be really useful. And that is to track your alumni progress over time at the program level by the program, not only by the university's overall alumni tracking and an alumni office. This takes time. It takes some staff assessment. It takes spending money on it instead of something else. And it also runs into some very difficult issues about privacy and what you can and can't do. It also sometimes bucks up against your alumni office, who wants to control this for fundraising purposes, and others. But nonetheless, the single most important piece of information you can give to prospective students and their parents is, here is where our alumni are working now. Here is what they're doing. Here's people 2 years out, 5 years out, 9 years out, 15 years out, as long as you can possibly track them. If you can pay some attention to that, then you will start doing two things. One of them, you'll help your new students understand what might be possible. And secondly, you'll begin to put them in touch with a network of people who have a friendly relationship with the school and are doing amazing things, and, not to put too fine a point on it, can raise the possibility of being hired both for interns, for practicums, and in full-time jobs. Next slide. So partnering with career services is not always an easy thing to do. Career services people are really wonderful people with very specific skills, but generally those skills are about things like how to use LinkedIn, about how to really maximize a career fair. There are things like resumes, cover letters, portfolios, and so forth. But they're less likely to have knowledge of what environmental employers, who sometimes have very niche kind of jobs to offer, what environmental employers are really looking for. And so in order to really partner with career services, you need to get together at the leadership level, the deans, the career advisors, the head of career services, your major faculty members, and meet together to talk about what you need from each other and what each other can bring. I think this will mean, if past experience is any guide, that one of the things you're likely to come up to is some joint surveys, so that both the Career Services Office and you can learn more about employer needs and trends that you can share with your students. I suggest that it's really a good possibility that after these conversations have taken shape, somebody will get the idea of coming up with something that feels kind of like a contract or a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that you can actually formalize a relationship with career services so that they can do their job better and use their skills, and you can do your job better, knowing what you can turn over to them so that you don't have to take your time away from, you don't have to be talking to your students about their resume. That may be something the Career Services Office can do. They might not have to talk to a student about everything that environmental careers are doing. They might have you do more of that. Come up with some kind of arrangement and figure it out so that you can take advantage of each other's core competencies. Next slide. So this is just something to tell you about one of the reasons that you might care at all to hear about some guy named Kevin Doyle. When I was the National Director for Programs at the Environmental Careers Organization, the former organization that David mentioned, I was responsible for co-authoring these books that you see on the screen for Island Press. And after a very, very long delay, it appears that I'll soon be working on a new updated edition for 2020 and beyond. Next slide. And please be in touch with me. I've really enjoyed my part of the webinar, and I'm glad now to turn it over to my friend and good colleague, Lisa E. Litzenberg.
And we have a minute for questions if anyone would like to put those into the chat.
I don't want to take away from any of Lisa's time, so but any questions as we get to the end of the webinar, I'm glad to take them at the end. Thanks.
Yeah, and while Kevin has his information up there, I'll just point out that even though Kevin is extremely busy, that he does work with individual colleges and universities and other institutions on contract work, as does Lisa. And so, you know, don't be shy about contacting them if you're looking for some help. Okay, why don't you go ahead, Lisa?
Let's see, are you able to see my PowerPoint?
Not yet, it's not shared.
It's not pulling up. If you can pull it up, maybe that's the best, and then when we can get
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa, and thank you, Kevin. That was a great presentation. I've had the great honor of working with Kevin a great deal on this very topic. And so Kevin talked to you about the importance of making sure students are developing the right skills to be marketable in their green career fields, and my presentation is really going to build on that. So I basically developed a universal green job skills list, or skills that green employers across a wide variety of sectors and disciplines value when hiring. So I'd like to go over those. Next slide. A bit about my background. I have 25 years experience in green careers, and as you heard earlier, I used to work for National Wildlife Federation for 12 years. So I have direct experience working as a green employer. I served on many hiring teams for National Wildlife Federation, so got firsthand experience in looking at what are the skills and experiences and attributes that employers are looking for when hiring people for new positions and internships. After that, I went on to lead the career services at University of Michigan for graduate students for 10 years. And there I gained a lot of wonderful experience working with students from a wide variety of disciplines. We had many students in the natural resources field, but also many doing dual degrees in business, engineering, public policy, urban planning, landscape architecture. So was able to get a wide variety of experience working with employers and understanding what the skill sets that they were looking for when hiring for internships and jobs. And then more recently launched my Green Career Advisor company, where I work with even a broader set of constituents on helping them find and secure green dream jobs for them. Next slide. So how I developed this list, basically, when I started at University of Michigan, I wanted to understand better what are those skills that employers really are looking for on student resumes. So how could I help my students be more marketable? So what I did is take hundreds of environmental job postings across many different sectors, across many different disciplines, and in fact, often interdisciplinary job opportunities in the green fields, and scoured over those, and then came up with 7 top skills that seemed to come up in many of those job postings that I reviewed. So I'm going to talk about those 7 skills that I found from that work, and then each of those slides are going to also give examples of how you can show that skill on your resume if you don't, and then also if you don't have that skill, some suggestions of how to gain it. I really won't be going over the last 2 pieces. I'll mostly be talking about the skill sets, but you can read over them during my presentation. They should be pretty self-explanatory, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end. So these are skills that are important to include on your resume, but I also want to add an important point that it's important to look at actual job postings. And as Kevin said early on, when you start your program, students should be looking at job postings that are relevant to their field so they get a better understanding. These universal job skills will be really important in understanding kind of the big picture, but they should also be looking at very specific job postings in their field so they can understand even more specifically. There might be very unique technical skill sets that they need to be gaining as well. So that's important. So some of these skills can be gained in the classroom. So faculty and staff on the call, it's important to be thinking about, are there ways that I can build some of these skill sets into the curriculum? And then some of the other skill sets students will need to pursue on their own. So students on the call, you need to be thinking about, how can I gain some of these or build some of these skills into internships, perhaps volunteer work, student leadership roles, etc. Next slide, please. So the first universal job skill that I found was probably by far and wide the most common one across, and I don't think it's surprising, but communication skills are critical to almost every field out there. And I mean both the ability to write and speak, and especially to convey complex topics to lay audiences. So that's a really critical skill set that every employer is looking for. You're going to be needing to communicate to internal teams or departments, as well as to external audiences, the general public, perhaps news outlets, depending on the job, maybe via social media, or to clients, as an example. And again, as I said, each of these slides is going to show you some examples of how you can show these experiences and how you can gain these. I won't go through each of these for the sake of time, but you can read these as I go and then ask questions at the end. Next slide, please. The second skill that's really important is team experience. Employers want to know that you can work effectively in a team setting, because many of the jobs require a team approach to problem solving and working on projects. Employers want to know, can you contribute your ideas? Can you be inclusive of other people on your team? Are you able to move projects forward with high quality outcomes and products, whether you're the leader of the team or whether you're just an individual member of the team? So this is really important. Next slide. The third skill I want to highlight is people skills. So this is the ability to get along well with others, to build relationships, to be a good listener, and perhaps to manage conflicts. Employers will want to know that you can get along well with other staff. I see this so often in interviews. employers will ask questions to try to get at, like, how do you resolve conflict? They want to know that you're not only capable of doing the job content-wise and skill-wise, but they also want to know that you're a good team member. And one way to show this is to demonstrate you have good people skills. You're able to get along well with others and manage conflicts should they arise. So these skills, people skills, are important to build effective relationships, and these can result in things like on the job, perhaps securing a new client, getting a new community partner on board for a project, securing a new donor. And so that people skills are also very important. Next slide. A fourth skill to look at is management skills. I would say for those, I know many on the call here are working for undergraduate institutions, so you might not immediately think about management skills as something that would be top on the mind of a undergraduate student just finishing their program. Many students may not go on immediately to management level roles, but you can be sure that employers, when they're hiring, they're looking for the best talent coming up, and they're thinking toward the future. We might be hiring for an entry-level position, but we want that person to be the best person possible with great leadership and potential for future management roles down the line. And so you need to be thinking about, are there ways to develop some management skills? And those might be things like the ability to develop a vision for a project, perhaps launching a new project or program, maybe managing a budget. Students may be able to gain that through, managing, perhaps if you're on a team project and it comes with a small amount of funding, to be able to manage that budget. Adapting to change, and also to the ability to lead or be on effective teams are some other examples of some management skills. And so students, if you're aspiring to take on a project or program manager role in the future, these are some things that you might want to pay attention to. Next slide, please. The fifth skill to think about is leadership potential. So this is the ability to lead people or programs. And also I think about this in a way that's a bit different, but the leadership potential is the ability to take the initiative to improve things without being asked. That is really impressive to an employer. So you might not be doing a huge task, but to the employer, if they can see that you're always looking out for them, that you're always looking to help streamline a process or a program, help bring them more members, things like that on your own, and you come up with ideas to do it, they're going to pay attention. So that's another important one. Next slide, please. The sixth one that I want to highlight are technical skills. So as I mentioned earlier, I really encourage students to be looking at specific job postings to identify specific technical skills that are needed in your field. So for example, things like maybe creating a GIS map or conducting field work, maybe executing a life cycle assessment for a particular product are a few examples. So this is, again, something that you'll want to do in addition to just thinking about these universal skills that I'm highlighting. Often employers are recruiting for very specialized technical skills, could be software as well. So be current and be knowledgeable about what those technical skills are. Next slide. The seventh skill and final skill I want to highlight are analytical and problem-solving skills. So this is the ability to solve problems analytically and to use creative thinking to do so. This is a skill set that's highly valued by employers, whether you may need to design innovative sustainability solutions for clients, or for example, maybe you need to come up with creative strategies to resolve wildlife conflicts that also incorporate a local community's needs. And so this is really important, one that you can show. Sometimes if you're working on projects that involve analyzing data, that can be shown through very specific work you've done through, using advanced Excel spreadsheet techniques to analyze that data, as an example. So these are the 7 skills, universal green job skills that I wanted to highlight for you today. And then I have a final tip about gaining relevant skills throughout your career. Next slide. I encourage all of you to never stop learning. It's really important for the big picture. We really need the best and the brightest out there, the most talented and passionate people to do the work that is needed to make our planet sustainable. Students, you might want to think about looking for employers that value continuous learning. Some of these employers may even pay for additional training or classes or degrees if it is relevant to their work. So that's just a final piece of advice. And then last slide. Just my contact information. And I guess I'll turn it over to our next speaker, Alan.
Yeah, before we do that, thank you, Lisa. This was great. And I want to encourage people, we do have questions, at least there's one that's come in through the chat function now, and we'll take a couple minutes for questions. So the question that came in to you, Lisa, and Kevin, feel free to jump in on this too, is through your research, what are the top technical skills that employers want to see? Where should the students be looking for these job postings?
That's a good question. That's a huge list of possible, depending on the type of career or job that a student is seeking. And as everyone here probably knows, those opportunities are hugely diverse in nature. So I think a good starting place would be to, as I think Kevin alluded to earlier, collecting that alumni data. Where are the alumni getting jobs, and what are their job titles? So that's a start. So if you're, depending on if your program is segmented into, let's say, a few different field areas or focus areas, you could segment that data to look at alumni graduating from those specific program areas, get the names of the employers and job titles, and look for those job postings for similar positions. I think that will be huge. And as Kevin also said in his presentation, talking to alumni and other professionals in the field where the students would be getting jobs, that's a great place to really look in depth at what are those technical skill sets. And it could be, it's really important to stay current. So even if you've done so before, let's say 10 years ago, that's going to be different set of skill sets that current employers are looking for today. So thinking about, any particular software that is new and emerging that students need to be up on would be a starting place.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. This is Kevin. That on Lisa's website, Green Career Advisor, there is a listing of most of the best, in fact, I think all of the best environmental job aggregator job posting sites. But I think one of the general pieces of advice that is usually given by employers is to start with looking at a type of job occupation that you want to do, say like climate resilience specialist or whatever it might be, and then find one or two leading employers, go to their individual websites and look at the job postings there. The closer you get to an individual posting on an individual site as opposed to aggregator sites, the better off you'll be. I think undergraduate students in particular spend way too much time on overwhelming aggregator sites that just don't direct them and narrow them, but instead just kind of explode their minds and they get overwhelmed. In terms of technical skills that are most in demand, it won't come as any surprise to anyone that it varies according to the area of specialization. So in my coastal management work, for example, I'm called upon right now. There's a lot of people who want visualization techniques using GIS layers so that you can visually, see the impacts of climate change. There's also a lot of people who want analytical skills related to adaptation strategies that are appropriate for different kinds of climate risks. I think you'll find that employers are eager, in fact, very eager to answer that question for each individual type of profession about what kind of technical skills are most in demand. And it gets back to the idea of putting together some very compelling advisory groups so that they can answer that question for individual occupations.
There's one more question, and I think let's just answer. It could take a long answer, but maybe you could, Lisa, just answer this briefly so that we can then turn to Alan. And this is what many of these skills that you've identified as green essential skills are skills that are needed in many disciplines. And so are there ways that these apply differently when you're looking at green careers as opposed to other careers that may have, want people who have communication and management and leadership, et cetera?
That's a great question. I do, when I was doing this project, I really, that stood out to me, that many of these skill sets, while I was looking specifically for green careers, they really are universal in nature to many other fields and disciplines. I think that, that many of these are transferable skills. So whichever way, however a student may gain these skills, even if it's from experience that's not environmentally related, so past experience a student has gained, if they can make it relevant, to that employer, I don't think it's necessarily needs to be in the context of an environmental setting. Employers are often really just looking for transferable skills. Can this person do this, have this skill, and how they obtained it can be important in some instances. So if it, obviously if you can gain it in an environmental context, that's the best, but that's not always needed.
And David and all, I would just like to underline that even more aggressively, because I think this is something that undergraduate faculty and staff can breathe out a little bit. If you are leaving your students with these kind of transferable skills, you're good to go. You can tell your students, we are preparing you for environmental careers when you get these transferable skills, because Lisa is right on the mark. Employers know how to make the transition of a transferable skill to their own need. You don't have to do that for them. They know how to do it. It helps if you know the communication skills to do it for them, but if you are leaving students with those skills, you're doing your job to prepare them for 21st century environmental jobs.
Great. Well, thank you both. And we can pick up more on this after our third presentation. But I do want to turn to Alan Christensen. And Alan, I've unmuted your mic so you can go ahead. And Alan is going to give us an example of how they've applied this, they do apply this approach for preparing their careers at the University of Massachusetts, Boston.
Thanks, David. Just give me a second to share my screen. All right, is that looking for everybody? Good. All right. I just want to say as we get started here that Kevin and Lisa, their lessons and their activities have really set up my presentation well, and I think that was by design. And I've been working with Kevin for a few years now, and so he's been invaluable to our development. So what I wanted to do was just give an example of how we are doing professional development across the curriculum in the School for the Environment, in particular the Environmental Studies and Sustainability program. And before I get into that, I want to just kind of give, as we developed the curriculum for the program a few years back for the, environmental studies and sustainability, one of the things we wanted to think about was developing a cohort. And then we were really thinking about what are the different year experiences and maintaining that cohort and that connectedness, not only from an academic or you know, purely academic curriculum, but from a social and co-curricular and a professional development standpoint. And so that's, I'm going to highlight the professional development vertical alignment, so to speak. That's what we call it, the 4-year experience. The way I looked at it and started off as I'm a former graduate program director, and when we had applicants applying to our program and they asked, you know, what do they need to do or how do they need to think about their application, I basically told them to think of their application as a profile made up of different components. And so we can see here your application profile in the center here is often started off with your transcripts and your grades, then your standardized exams, your letters of recommendation, your personal statements, your resume, CV, and your first contact. And that is all made up of all the different things you did. The like Lisa was saying, the soft skills that you gain, the technical, all the different experiences. All of that goes into this. And some of these things like resume building, personal statements, even letters of recommendation and the first contact are not necessarily things traditional academic programs teach students to think about or to prepare. And so we wanted to make sure that we got that in our curriculum. The way we looked at it was this vertical alignment, the first year experience, second year experience, third year experience, the fourth year experience, and then as we see here, as the holistic, as the graduating student. The thread that we have from the vertical and horizontal alignment of professional development, so within a year and as we move up in years, we are organizing in the student profile or e-portfolio concept. So that's kind of what we are selling to our students the minute they walk in the door in our first year class, and I'll go through that next. And this is our first year experience. Our first year experience starts off with a first year seminar. Our first year seminar is 2 credits in each the fall and spring semester. What we cover are things such as student success, mentoring and peer mentoring, co-curricular learning, and we are introducing the idea of an e-portfolio. We use Digication as a product. And we look at these different artifacts that we say at the end, when you graduate, you're going to have a full e-portfolio. You're going to have an autobiography, a mission statement. You're going to identify your curricular and co-curricular materials, such as your classes and out-of-class learning, your professional development documents, which are your CV and the resume and the differences between those two, personal statement, infographic resume, video resume, and then various artifacts such as papers, posters, presentations, photographs, videos, podcasts. And then we give we do have an opportunity as we build this template on our portfolio for a blog and journal aspect. And then the students can share this portfolio or keep it to themselves, and they could be using it for different classes, but the idea is that as they go along, we'll revisit this every semester and every year at different courses. And then down here, we have example of some of the co-curricular. We have a coastal cleanup in which we in many of our classes have co-curricular assignments or that we have them involved in. This is in the middle here is the e-portfolio. I didn't get permission in time to get one of our students, so this is my template that I use, but this you can see here are the different categories of what I call professional development documents that you would want to share with a potential employer. And then I'll get into the next picture here in a second, but that's Kevin in our retreat. And so in our second semester, we revisit the portfolio, do more co-curricular learning. And then we decided after talking to Kevin, we were thinking about when do we do a professional development retreat with our students. And we decided it's important to do this our first year. And you say, well, they may not be thinking about it yet, but maybe that's why we want to do it. We want to do it and have them from from the first semester or first year, start thinking about the end and what they need to do. So that's what we initiated. It's a one-day pre-retreat visit where Kevin comes in, talks about what to expect, introduces themselves. The students get comfortable with him. Then we do 3 days, 2 nights on Nantucket, where we do a series of 3 workshops, small and large group breakouts, some personal time. We also explore the island for the natural history and a little bit about the history of Nantucket to give that perspective. And they explore what it means to professionally. They explore themselves, what kind of learner they are, what kind of personality and characteristics. And it builds a bonding experience. And then there's a post-retreat external professional advising components that Kevin offers up his time, and the students actually reach out to him for a external professional advising. So in addition to their faculty advising and their academic advising on campus. The feedback from this is we just had a group of students help with our welcome day, which is students that have been admitted to the program, and we had some of the students that went there to this last weekend and said that was the most impactful activity that they did in their first year. And so it really becomes an impactful experience. Our second year experience, yes.
If I could just interrupt for a second, because there's a couple of questions that probably would be good to address before you go on. And they're asking in terms of sort of who are these students? Are these experiences the same for all of your tracks? What happens to if you have students who are transferring into the university or joining the major after the first year? So if you could just
those are great details. We've been thinking really deeply about this. So let me I'll back up. University of UMass Boston, every student is required to do a first year seminar. The School for the Environment, it is a special type of seminar. Instead of a one semester 4 credit seminar, we decided to do a 2 semester sequence of 2 credits each. And we also in first year seminars are not necessarily across the university, are not in a particular major. It's in a subject area, but not in a major. We decided, because we're relatively small, we only have 300 majors in the school. We decided that every one of our students are going to take and get to know each other in what is called 178 and 188 and 187 and 188, first year experience 1 and 2. With the caveat that we're going to have some athletes, or we're going to have some special situations where not everybody's going to be able to do it. And so we then developed a second semester 4 credit version of this that we're actually running this first time this semester. Same material, everything's the same, except we were able to capture those students that weren't able to do it first semester or transferred in, is what your one of the questions was, so that if somebody came in at mid-semester, they don't get lost in the shuffle. And then we'll talk about the second year experience. We're working on that now. We're doing intermediate seminars, but we also, in our second year, we have something special for community college transfers. I guess I can move on to the next slide, unless David, you wanted to address another question.
No, go right ahead. That was what people wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Then our second year seminar, we have a second year seminar. Oh, and I should have said we have 3 majors. Well, we technically have 4, but we have in community development, we have environmental studies, sustainability, and environmental science, a BA and a BS. We want everybody because we're looking at the human, built, and natural environment. And so we're because we're relatively small, we have about 40 new majors, our first year students every year. We want everybody to get to know each other and leverage that. So in our second year seminar, this is in particular for environmental studies. We revise education portfolio. In this second year, we highly encourage placement into a lab or a research group, or potentially into one of our collaborating employers. We have several collaborators of non-government organizations and a private industry partner that help us with internships so that our students get placed in these jobs early on. We also have a program on campus that does about 5 to 10 students getting basic laboratory research skills. Then we're working with Kevin on this idea of the peer and near-peer mentoring and external professional advisors and developing that. And so with the peer and near-peer mentoring, UMass Boston has, this is an emerging area. There's some external organizations that do this, but UMass Boston has some expertise, and we actually have a 1-credit seminar that is students get credit for being mentors to younger students. And then we also have this as part of, so we're developing that as part of a mentoring process. And then working with Kevin on this external professional advisor office hours, where he has so many hours dedicated per week, and students can sign up and get advising on their CVs, as well as looking for internships and just general career advice. And that's our second year. So again, we're revisiting the portfolio in the second year seminar, updating the artifacts, and we're doing these other components. And then in the third year, we have a specifically designed third year experience seminar, which is called Professional Development. It's an online course, and this is where the students evaluate their profile. They heavily revisit the Digication ePortfolio. They develop and get feedback from the instructor on their CV, their personal statement, infographic resume, video resume. They work on their LinkedIn profile. And then at the end of the semester, they do a mock application and interview for a job or internship, a real job or internship that they find. They apply with a cover letter, with the transcripts, CV, and references. And we conduct a 30-minute mock online video interview with 2 to 3 interviewers using Zoom. And they get feedback on that. We're going to add to that, and we're working with Kevin on this, is that they would be responsible for organizing and hosting a career service event in December. So that's it. This class, the third year seminar, is in the fall. They are putting this on for the 4th year students. They're getting the experience of putting together and making the contacts with potential employers. And they're going to flip it a little bit, and talking with Kevin is, instead of just having the traditional where the employers have their tables and people come to them, also have the employers give some presentations on what is one of the most interesting aspects of their industry or their organization. We also, in the third year, this all part of this, it was for the fall, was to get them ready for placement in off-campus internships for between their junior and senior year, continuing the peer and near-peer mentoring, and continuing the external professional development advisor office hours. All right, and then we, in their fourth year, we have the fourth year seminar. This is where we have them update. This is a topic. It's debating and looking at environmental issues, but as part of that is to update their Digication and e-portfolio and their artifacts, especially their academic work, making sure that they have the artifacts of the papers that they've had, the poster, their oral presentations, all that, and just kind of double checking that as they go out and get prepared to looking for jobs or going to grad school. And one of their requirements is that they attend and participate in the December Careers Day that includes a poster or an oral scholarly presentation of some sort that would be part of that Careers Day, so that our employers can also see the work that they're doing. And so hopefully by that time, what we get is we get a more complete graduating student profile in which we take care of they're taking care of their transcripts and grades, they're being prepared academically for their exams. But we're working on this half over here, the letters of recommendation, the personal statements, the resume, and building their portfolios to get a job or the best graduate placement that they can. And that's what I have. So I can take any questions or.
Great, well, thanks. So given that we're almost up at an hour, I think we will remain on for another 5 or so minutes if people want to ask questions or share their experiences. But before, let me just thank the three of you and turn it over to Mitchell for his closing comments, and then we'll go back to anybody who wants to stay on and engage in a little more colloquy with our three speakers. So go ahead, Mitchell.
So yeah, thank you, Kevin, Lisa, and Alan, and thank you to everyone for attending. Just a few things that we want to mention before everyone has to take off. On this slide, I've listed some of the upcoming webinar opportunities. So feel free to, we'll have registration opening up for those hopefully sometime soon, so keep an eye out there. Consider your department or program for NAGT's Traveling Workshops program. We have an application deadline coming up on March 15th, and a specific webinar or workshop theme specifically on interdisciplinary programs, and David actually runs those. We also invite you to join us at the Rendezvous in July in Nashville, or at the ACE conference in Orlando in June. And we have a community discussion board that we invite you to contribute to. You can ask questions, type comments, that sort of thing. And we always value your feedback and ideas on this webinar and future webinars. I will be posting a link into the chat to a webinar evaluation. It's also there on the screen, and we'd very much appreciate your feedback. A final thank you all for attending, and we've got some time for some questions.
So Alan, I think this is to you. Question on how do you get the faculty on board, and maybe I'll add to that question in terms of what you described is you know, it's clearly the first class approach to this. What kind of a commitment does it take in terms of both the human resources and financial resources to provide these great career and professional development programs throughout the 4 years of your students' life? So one is how do you get the faculty to buy in, and two, how do you support this financially and in terms of human resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got to first say that my dean is very supportive of this approach, and is in addition to the academic mission and the research mission, definitely supports the idea of getting our students as much professional development as possible. In seeing how invaluable that was, in part because a lot of us never had that and had to kind of learn a lot of this on ourselves, and we were lucky to be able to get where we were because of this. And so we want to give our students as much of an advantage as we can. And we're all competing against each other, but we're all sharing this information because we think it's important for our students. It takes definitely a dedication and commitment. And the reason I was the architect behind our program, and took from the curriculum from a lot of different places, and including ACEs. But one of the things that we wanted to definitely do is build in the professional development, and it took a little working to do that with through the governance process, because they said, well, there's, a lot of faculty and as we went through the governance said, they should be doing this on their own. And then I finally got it through that. Look at all the communication, the academic products that they're doing. When we're looking at communication and the skills and documented skills, then they were able to see, oh yeah, well, this is actually, has some gen ed capabilities and documenting your various different analytical and technical expertise. And also because of the e-portfolio, and a lot of this was actually dealing with technology. So we were actually meeting some academic components of it. I do work really heavily with faculty, and it's a slow but meticulous process. And if you can show some impacts, like the students just brightening their faces after talking about the Nantucket experience with Kevin and how invaluable that was, or how much they've learned by doing the different seminars and professional development activities. And, from our standpoint, the technology of the e-portfolio, seeing how they could use it in their classes for different things. You just don't have to make it about an electronic CV, so to speak. It can be used, e-portfolios can be used in a lot of different ways. You could use it just do all of your assignments in one class on that. So it's a slow but meticulous process, and I'm not going to lie that it is a lot of hard work and dedication.
And Alan, there's a lot of logistical work in this, clearly. So is this something that you get release time for as your role as undergraduate program coordinator, or do you have an academic staff person who works with you, or how do you actually implement the tremendous time commitment this must take?
I do get some release time for doing this, and I get a lot of credit from the personnel committee.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions? Looks like we still have 20 or so of us who are listening in. So if you have any questions or comments,
Put online?
Yeah, you could put it on the chat here. Or so following up on my question, how much release time, and then how is your credit for this evaluated? I know you're a tenured faculty member, but you still have to be evaluated in some way. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, it's under my service. So I get one course load reduction for being undergraduate program director. And it's under service, so I put it under that. But if I'm doing it in the class, then we have a place in our AFR, which is our annual faculty report, where I detail out unique perspectives of the curriculum.
Great.
David, this is Kevin, can I make a comment about that question?
Kevin, yeah, so go ahead.
one of the things that I have learned from both looking at and engaging with Alan's students is that in the process of doing the things that he outlined, they master the same 7 skills that employers want that Lisa talked about. So I think that when you talk about, for example, the e-portfolio, it's easy to think that it's just an e-resume, you know, but it's not that. They have to develop the things that they eventually put into their portfolio. The portfolio helps guide them towards employer-needed skills that they then go out into the rest of their academic experience with some guidance about how to use all of their courses in a way that will incorporate back into their e-portfolio. So there's a learning feedback loop that that this approach really helps. And I think it's one of the ways that you can talk to faculty members. You don't need to make an either-or distinction between what is strong academic learning and preparation and what is employer-focused skill development. Both of them can be the same thing.
Right, and then Kevin, let me also just ask you, you've obviously worked with a lot of colleges and universities, and Lisa, you may want to respond also, but many of these schools are nowhere near this comprehensive approach of UMass Boston. So what are some first steps that one could take if you are, say, a program head or a faculty member trying to get your department to do more in terms of preparing the students? What are some of the initial steps that you've seen that have worked with institutions?
So I'll list 3 first steps that I think I've seen different people use, and they point to the idea of start wherever you are. So some people might find one of these first steps to be, you know, difficult to even consider. So here they are. So one first step is to form an employer advisory group that is a meaningful group that you really are going to use. So volunteers have to know that it's going to be a working group to look at the curriculum, to look at where people are going now, to talk to the faculty, to have engaged conversations with the eye in mind to take on board what they say and actually incorporate it. So that's one.
Okay.
A more student-focused approach is to have some kind of a one-time career-focused class where you bring in employers if that's the best you can do, or you take a more comprehensive approach like what Alan is discussing. And then the last idea is to go over to the Career Services Office and say, we need you to cross over to help us. So come and talk to us about what you can do for resume development, for career fairs, et cetera, because our students and environment need the same kind of attention that you're giving to management students and accounting and engineers. And you have to serve us, so get over here and talk to us about how you can serve us better. So those are 3 starting points.
Right.
Yeah, I'll add a couple. This is Lisa. I would say, you know, I think Kevin talked about this earlier, but gathering and assessing alumni data. So just quickly understanding what are the career tracks that are most commonly sought after by students that are finishing the program, what careers do they go on to, so that you can really identify a manageable number of career tracks, and then what are the skill sets needed so that you can, you know, more customize a program to address those needs and help students along those career tracks. I think also a simple thing that I did when I was at Michigan was to go around and gather data on like kind of the best practices, talk to other career offices or other programs within University of Michigan, but also beyond, like who is doing a good job at helping their students career-wise, and don't be shy about replicating, you know, existing programs with, of course, with permission of others. But I think that's a great way to kind of find who's successful out there and model your programs from there.
All right. Well, thank you all, both the three of you, Mitchell, for hosting us, and thank all of you out there in the chat function for your contributions, and the rest of you for listening in. And Mitchell, you have any closing comment?
Nope, just to thank you for coming. And I'll say again, we appreciate everyone's feedback. If you do have an opportunity to fill out that evaluation. And the recording of the webinar and the webinar slides will be on the webinar event page.
And they'll be getting a follow-up email from you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.